All right, welcome everybody. My name's E.R. Anderson. I'm here tonight with Pamela Sneed, who is our keynote feature for Atlanta Pride's kickoff
Hey,
event.
happy
Yeah,
Pride. Okay.
thank you
Oh,
so
yeah,
much.
yeah, right?
And we're here with our hostess with the mostest, Teresa Davis, who always holds it down with us at Clitorati. Obviously, we are gathered virtually. We wish that we are physically together to celebrate Atlanta Pride's 50th anniversary. But getting to do it in this way is actually really special because we have a little bit more flexibility. More folks can watch with us. And we also have another co-sponsor tonight, which is the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American history and culture. So we're really honored to have them in the house as well. So thank you to Morris and Ruben and everyone over there. We really appreciate y'all. We're going to be repackaging this and hosting it on their YouTube as well as our YouTube. So if anybody misses this event, it will be available again later on YouTube in perpetuity. So I want to introduce our speakers and then I'm going to get out of the way and let them have lots of fun. So we're here tonight to honor Pamela Sneed. Pamela is a New York-based poet, writer, performer, and visual artist. She's the author of Imagine Being More Afraid of Freedom Than Slavery, Kong and Other Works, Sweet Dreams, and A Chaplet Gift by Belladonna. Her new book, Funeral Diva, is available now for pre-order from Charis Books and More. It comes out at the end of the month. But we wanted to get on it first. She's been featured in the New York Times Magazine, The New Yorker, Time Out, and Bomb. She appears in Nikki Giovanni's The 100 Best African American Poems. And a newer chaplet, Black Panther, was recently published by Belladonna. So we're really honored to have you here.
Thank
And
you. Thank
yeah,
you.
and Teresa, who I think everybody in Atlanta knows very well, but just in case folks are watching from around the world and don't know Teresa, Teresa Davis is an educator, storyteller, poet, author, poetry slam champion, and the host of the award-winning open mic Java Speaks. As a slam poet, Teresa has competed individually and on teams for over a decade, and in 2011 won the Women of the World Poetry Slam. She's the author of the collections After This We Go Dark and Drowned, A Mermaid's Manifesto. Her one-woman show, Then They'll Tell You It's All in Your Head, debuted as a part of Seven Stages Homebrew series in the fall of 2017. And Teresa is now the literary events coordinator and the Charles J.K. Riley Memorial Library facilitator for the Arts Exchange. So Teresa's got a bunch of other stuff in the works that ain't even made it into the bio yet, but I'm sure you can tell us about that too. So thank you both for being here. Thank you to our sponsors, Atlanta Pride and the Auburn Avenue Research Library. We love you both. And I'm just thrilled to let y'all have this free ranging conversation. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, Pamela. How are you?
I'm good. Well, actually, things are a little strange. My father's sick, so there's a couple of things that are weighing me down a bit. But I'm excited about the book, and I'm excited to meet you and to be here. And I want to say happy Pride because it's not easy in these times, in this administration and rolling back everything.
Yeah.
So really to be able to be out and proud about who you are is actually quite a feat.
Yeah, I feel like that's what we're gonna have to do because like we are watching literally several histories repeat themselves at the same time. And it's
Right.
like between the whiplash and the shaken baby syndrome, I don't even know what to do right now. I'm just like, we're just gonna keep on writing and keep on
Right.
telling our things and keep on being out here in these streets, doing whatever we're doing in these streets. I would like for you, if you're up for it, to share us a piece as we enter into this conversation. I got the book yesterday, so I've been diving into the poetry. More than I have the essays so far, but I'm going to go back to that. But I was like, can I read this whole thing in 12 hours? Probably not. But I tried. But would you like to share a piece to get us kicked off? And then we'll go into some questions and kind of go back and forth.
Sure. I usually read this piece like last, but I'm gonna read it first.
Okay.
Um, So, because I mean, just talking about being proud and what a feat it is and where we're coming from. So, here we go. I used to always write about a subtle saint, slamming his hand down on the pulpit at Donald Wood's funeral, when it was common to hide the cause of death of young men who died from AIDS if they were buried at all and weren't abandoned. Somebody told me about a thin boy, thin with fear and death, played piano for the choir. No one touched him or talked about it. I know in my mother's family, her mother's sister said parasite had killed her son when he died suddenly. But I remember once him coming out of a gay bar in Boston, and all the white boys said, "How do you know her?" And I don't know if it was him or I who said, "Cousin, I'm his cousin." He made me promise not to tell anyone in the family I'd seen him there. So when they said parasite, I knew something didn't ring true. His mother, a seemingly healthy woman, died shortly after that, but I always felt their deaths were related. His mother either from the lies of repression or a broken heart, having lost her young son. And I know everyone blames Jussie Smollett for his lies and staged attack, but it makes me think that there was something very toxic going on, that he didn't feel he could talk to someone, either that or he was covering up an addiction or a hookup. Watching Asado stand up at Donald's funeral and tell the truth goes down in history as one of the bravest moments I'd ever seen. Either that or Audre Lorde spreading open the arms of her dashiki, the bravest woman we'd all witnessed telling a crowded room of followers, "I began on this journey as a coward." That or seeing a friend at the height of the AIDS era at a bar, his face covered in purple welts, refusing to hide, going out in public. That or Donald Woods being feeble, barely able to walk, accepting an award as a director of AIDS films, or an ex-lover on a beach taking off her top and refusing to hide her mastectomy scar. Or when Denitra Vance performed at the public theater and danced naked, revealing her mastectomy scars, and Audrey refusing to wear prosthesis. Or when Zaxmo Kai in Master Harold and the Boys in the first Broadway play that a cousin took me to said to his white master, "Have you ever seen a black man's ass?" and pulled down his pants and revealed himself to the audience. I was 16 years old. Or seeing my mother beaten religiously and still go out to work as if it hadn't happened at all. Or seeing me survive so many incredible tests. Once when I was talking to a doctor, I doubted my strength. He looked at me incredulously and he said, "You are strong." Another doctor looked at me, my suffering, and he asked, "Isn't anyone there for you?" And another said, "You deserve to be taken care of." And today, once more, I am nursing my broken heart, caused by someone who betrayed, was not honest. That and attending an event and asking white people to give up their seats to black people who couldn't sit down, and seeing social justice in action. Yes, I often think of Asado for the important place he resides in my history, but today I am examining his tactics, pulling the tools off the shelf, dusting off the weaponry in an exhibit, because today I need to use what he taught me. Today, I feel that puff of rage, that continuous assault, and I want to stand up and testify, though I haven't, too, been asked. I want to interrupt all the proceedings, all the places Black lesbians have been erased and silenced, like looking down at a manuscript and seeing that they asked a young white woman to write about Black queer history when it's been my area of expertise forever, or only attributing 80s and 90s AIDS activism to ACT UP. I want the point of outrage not only to be the historicizing of AIDS, but the fact that women and Black lesbians have been erased from the dialogue. When there are so many organizations like GMAD, Other Countries, Adoti, Men of All Colors Together, Salsa Soul, Las Buenas Amigas, and more, or asking where are all the Black lesbians on Pose, because certainly they were there on the piers and part of that history. And why are white men constantly at the helm to tell our stories? And why don't white queers recognize that, and seeing panel after panel being organized on history and art and all things important to the world, and no one thinking or noticing it might be important to have a Black lesbian present, just like they kicked Stormé out of the Stonewall narrative. And what about the people who weren't on the streets, but in jobs, fighting the system? The dykes and the queers meeting each other, forming community and connections and family. and love, just like in South Africa, where they prevented intermingling, but ways were found. And each time we touched or loved or found each other in darkness and in light, it was resistance. And every time we told each other, you're beautiful, you're not wrong, it was resistance. When we stood up to the parents and the families and the courts and those that shunned us, it was resistance. When we wore what we really wanted to wear, it was resistance. Yelled at the doctors and the drug professionals, it was resistance. And every time we wrote and read poems, it was resistance. And every time some queer kid stays alive because they saw us, read us, discovered the archive, we've won. Every war is fought on our bodies. And one day, after the gender, racial, sexual orientation wars are over in America, there will be a new generation, just like in South Africa, called the Born Frees.
Nice. Thank you. Nice, nice, nice. While you were reading that, I had a flash of college, and I remember this is back in the 80s. I'm older, like a fine wine.
Okay.
But I remember going to this school, and it was John B. Gordon College, and I walked into an African American studies class. I was the only Black person in the room. All the students were white, and the educator, the professor, was white. And I promptly stood up and walked out. And it became a thing. I was like, how is a white person going to teach me Black studies? How are you going to teach me African American studies when, like, nowhere in this whole title is your lane? Like, I can't do that. And I'm not going to be the person who everybody looks to answer the question. It hadn't come out yet, but like, I'm not going to be the person. Is this true? Like I can speak for all Black people. It's wild. But thank you for that. That was beautiful. So as an artist, you're a poet. Yes. A performer, an essayist, a teacher, right? How did all these things come together to choose the form of Funeral Diva, and where did that title come from? Because it's an amazing title.
Oh, thank you. Like, some people are like, Funeral Diva? What's that about? Like, they get a little like irritated. And like, if you get to know me, I'm pretty funny. Like, I could be like, I have wry humor, and you'll find that in the book. And so Funeral Diva, in a way, it's referring to something very serious, which is, like, basically coming of age in the AIDS era, and like losing like most of my friends, and basically, becoming a funeral diva, and like basically just going to a lot of funerals, and I would wear like all these like, lavish costumes, and to celebrate, these like, lavish gay men who are dying. And then the most important funeral I wasn't asked to speak at, and then that was like devastating for me. So I was like eulogizing people that I, barely knew, and then the one that was most important I didn't. And so that's where the title came about. And I think like all of my mediums, I guess, or genres are always in action when I'm making things. Like, it's all interrelated. And I really feel like that's what's happening in arts programs now. Like, whereas, once before it was like, okay, you studied one thing, you know what I mean? You're a writer, you stay in the writing, you're in theater, you stay in the theater,
Yeah.
And like, really, like, the art program of the future or of now is really interdisciplinary, like, it's just, it's all of those things, like, and I mean, that makes sense, it's kind of like Western, education and everything has taught us to kind of fragment ourselves, right? And so it's that kind of mind, body, spirit split, right? And so like being able to work as an interdisciplinary artist, I mean, it's much more holistic.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I feel like as Black women, and Black women in general, already have to split themselves in so many parts, you know. So this idea of not using all of the parts of us that we have to do something, it doesn't, I don't think it phases most Black women, because we've been doing that the whole time, right?
Right, right.
We've been doing all the things all the time, and then keeping our fearful hearts in check, and you know, taking care of business and taking care of people. So in the poem that you shared, the part about, you know, Black lesbian stories and Black women being erased, you know, what untold stories and experiences are you hoping readers will reflect on while reading Funeral Diva?
Well, I mean, there was like a young Black lesbian who contacted me, and she, you know, she said she felt very seen, you know, reading the book. And I was like really happy about that. Or even like Jericho Brown, I don't know if you know him, he's a wonderful poet, and he's like, you know, he has a health thing right now, so, you know, if you have good vibes, send it to him. But you know, one of the things that he said to me, what, after he heard me read The Born Free, and he was sitting in the front row at the poetry project, and one of the things he said, you know, I held my breath the entire time, but he said, you know, like when people talk about Audre, like no one's ever quoted that quote, you know, I began on this journey as a coward, you know. And so like really trying to reinforce her courage. And I did something with Nigel Whitson, I think like about a year or two ago, and it was on Audre Lorde, but I was the only person there who actually knew her. You know what I mean? And so it's like sort of like taking her out of the realm of like, you know, the mythological, but
Yeah.
you know, and putting her in the realm of the real.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to, you know, our identities are like shifting, and there's so many different ways that people identify, and I don't like think of like Black lesbian necessarily as like defining like, you know, solely my sexuality, because I think sexuality is like fluid and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I also choose it as a political term. Do you know what I mean? Like I name myself that, and I name myself even more that now because of the fact that I feel like we are disappearing from the dialogue, right? And so I feel like people are trying to right wrongs, and so there's like certain, you know, members of like, you know, the gay and lesbian community that are being more recognized than others. But it's kind of like we have to find like holistic like sort of approaches. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We can't disappear anybody to like, you know, celebrate somebody else. You know what I mean? Like it has to be, you know, it has to be holistic. It has to be, and it can't, you know, the vision has to be large, you
Yeah.
know. And like now it's starting to come out. Actually, it was like 2 weeks, no, like a week ago, like the New York Times did an article on basically the war against Black girls. And like it's finally starting to come out, you know, that like the people that are most likely to fall through the cracks, and that's something that I say in Funeral Diva, are Black girls, you
Yeah.
know, Black women,
Yeah.
right? And so the bottom line is that somehow that's being like forgotten. And now like the Times did a whole like a huge thing on it, and they're saying that even more than like Black men, that Black girls are like suffering, right?
Yeah.
And Black women. And so in that regard, you know, I mean, I'm trying to assert, you know, identity. I'm trying to assert a history, a strength, you know, because also people need to know that like we're here. Like I was really mad like during like all the like protests and stuff like that. There was like this meme that was going around on you know, social media, and it was like a young fair skin. I imagine she was lesbian, I imagine she was biracial. I don't know, but I'm assuming those things from the picture. But it said, you know, we are not, you know, our ancestors, we will fuck you up. And I was like, excuse me? It's like the only reason why you're here is because we fucked some shit up. You know what I mean? And I
Right.
mean, that's
Right.
like, that's queer people, that's like Black people, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? That's women, you know? So it's like, don't get it twisted. You know what I
Right.
mean? By no means, you know, have we been passive? You know what I
Right.
mean? You could like, I mean, that's why I want to start to teach and preach. I mean, I've been to like, Cape Coast Castle. I've been to the slave forts and I know what we fought. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, I think having a sense of like an intergenerational struggle. Um, and again, like if we just like, assign youth the idea of like resistance or rebelling or whatever, then we're just sort of duplicating the same old structures. Like in the way that I envision, it's sort of like no one gets left behind. Everybody has a role,
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
think about, the powerful thing that happened in South Africa was that like when a lot of young people died, they had to leave their children in the hands of grandmothers, like when they died from AIDS, like so a lot of the population was lost, and so older women were becoming mothers again, right, because they had to take care of their children's children. And then
Right.
the interesting thing is, and so then the society started like educating these women, right? And so like in giving them resources and stuff like that, and that became really powerful, right? So it's like it's not like, I always think like the most interesting educational demographic is actually like middle-aged, like older women. So
Yeah.
powerful,
Yeah.
you know. So it's like I don't know. Like I feel like youth, of course, I mean, I'm a teacher and I feel like, ensuring generations is like really important, but also like taking care of like, us here, including everybody, creating different models. It's not just like, oh, children are the future. It's
Yeah.
like old school. You know what I mean?
And I mean, and in theory, we all know that because,
Right.
yeah. But at the same time, like, yeah, that meme confused me as well. I was like, have you not heard of Ida B. Wells? Have you not heard of Franny Lee? I mean, have you not heard of these like awesome badass women who were like fucking shit up on principle and on point? And like, how are you not your ancestor? Of course I'm my ancestor. So yeah, that
Right.
confuses me. And then I have the moments where I'm like, am I just too old to get it? Are they like, is this some code I don't know yet? Because I am old head. I don't know the new hip kids talk. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. But I think that a lot of what's happening today. As an artist, I've been in two different places. I'm wondering if you're there with me. So, like, as an artist, I write about things that happen in society. I'm a socially political writer, right? So I write about what's happening. And the fact that I have poems that I wrote that I wrote 15 years ago, I could have written yesterday.
Right.
Bothers me,
Right.
And I'm in that weighing place of like, oh yeah, I'm glad America suddenly realized, oh shit, we're racist. But I'm also like, we've been saying this the whole time,
Right.
So for me, my creativity kind of gets stuck, in that place of, I've already done this. I've already said this. I've said this so many times. How do you work through that kind of frustration, or have you even been in that frustration place?
Well, I mean, truthfully, and I was saying this to a friend of mine, like, I mean, I consider myself to be like worldly, I'm always like the town crier, I mean, I've sounded so many alarms. But I am really in a state of shock because I never thought I would live to see like white supremacy, like literally people torches in the streets, the president and the cabinet, like literally running on a platform of white supremacy and enacting that. And I mean, for as much as I've seen and as much as I've done, I'm in shock. This one has really blown me away. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I mean, I feel that way more in terms of form. Like I feel like, oh, I was writing epic poem. I've been writing epic poems my entire life, right? And the bottom line is that like when I was really starting out, you know, they're like, oh no, you know, like the poem has to be this way, short form, and it has to sound like this, and blah blah blah. And now, you know, people are like, you know, they're talking about, you know, hybrid literature, which is what, you know, I do, or, you know, they're publishing epic length poems, you know, by women of color and stuff like that. And they're like acting like it's like all brand new, but it's like, we've been doing this forever. So
Yeah.
I end up feeling more frustrated with form, you know, like with the fact that like it's just kind of like, are you serious? Like, has it taken this long for people to get ready? You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
even if you've been like a political artist and something like that, and like, you know, and then there was a period in the art where what people really looked down on, you know, political stuff. And like now, you know, all those people who look down are now saying something like, you know, Black Lives Matter, you know, and you're like, oh, okay. You know what I'm saying? Oh,
Who
you
knew,
caught
right?
up. But, you know, so it's like, that's where I start to feel really frustrated. Like I feel like I can address the times all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes like, okay, like say I wrote this piece, America Ain't Ready, like about like more than 10 years ago. And it was meant to be like an epic, and it was about the role of artist, and it was predicated on Audre Lorde's Poetry is Not a Luxury.
Yeah.
And it starts off like, you know, asking people to imagine that there are no words, right? And you can't use the Bible, you can't sing a song, you can't do any of the things, because I'm trying to underscore the importance of art in the culture, right? And the importance of like paying artists, right?
Yeah.
And like you don't approach the CEO of any other business and ask them to perform for free. But for
Right.
some reason, you know, people think, oh, writer, oh yeah, I wrote a poem once, you know, fourth grade, you know, and it's like, okay, that's cool. But, you know, I've taken this on as a science, you know what I mean? And so I'm saying that, and like just now, people are starting to say, yeah, you should pay artists. Just now, they're starting to like look at the value. I mean, like, really, in terms of this pandemic, I feel like it's artists who've held it down. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's artists who've given all their services. It's like everywhere you go, an artist has donated something. You
Yeah.
know, it's just sort of
Yeah.
like artists have stuff all over. You know, it's like artists who've held us through this whole thing, and no one, you know, no one's saying anything about that. You know what I mean? But I feel like, I mean, I did a what was it? A commencement speech, you know, and I talked about like artists as essential workers, you know. And so, you know, I mean, I feel like, well, I've been saying this for like ever, and that piece has always been like way ahead of its time. You know, and now I'll start to see
Yeah.
things on Facebook where people might start to acknowledge that, you know.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, and you know, as an artist, I'm constantly asked to perform for exposure.
Right.
And my response is always, how did you find me? And they were like, I Googled you. I'm like,
Right.
if you can Google me, clearly I'm exposed. Okay. How much money we gonna pay now?
Right.
Because
Right.
a poet
Well,
likes to eat as well, right?
not
Um,
considering it to be a job. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like, you know, you're going to pay like, you know, thousands of dollars for that coat or those leather pants or something like that. And then you want to like download your music for, you know, 50 cents and complain, you know, and then, or you know what I mean? Or like, or be like your friends like, hey, come to my show. And it's like, how much is it? Can I get a comp? You know, and it's $10. You know what I'm saying? So, even the way what we've been taught to value, you know, so it's like Apple puts out any kind of, you know, terrible product that breaks down. You know, I'm having Apple issues right now, so of course I'm going to talk about that, right? But you know, it's like people camp out overnight, you know, Apple, you know what I mean, any kind of money that they ask for, and then the artist says, hey, you know, I need you to pay, you know, $5 for my CD, and there's a great uproar. And so there's like, that's the kind of conditioning, and I'm guilty of it too, so I'm not like just like preaching, you know, but I feel like there has to be a reconditioning, you know, so that we
yeah.
can begin to like value and see, like sometimes I imagine, what if instead of stores, there were art centers everywhere? You know what I mean? So like, what if like in the airport, instead of like, going to buy all this stuff or whatever, or what if it was like, go and like, paint something, or what, draw, or I don't know. And so I just try to imagine what the world would be like if we had more access to art and less about like, buy this, buy that, and buy this will make you, happy, and, you'll look good, but no emphasis on the soul, Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I feel that. So when you write, what is your writing? Are you a morning writer? Or are you an afternoon writer? Or are you like an idea just like bam, and then you got to go into it right then? Or do you dream a thing? What is your process like?
Well, oh boy. I mean, like when I teach poetry specifically, like I teach physical poetry. And so for me, that means like basically putting your body into it. Like we're always writing. Like, I mean, we have like some kind of mythology that writing only happens when you sit down at the desk, and write it out on a piece of paper. But it's like we're always in, like we're doing the dishes, we're laughing, we're making love, we're cooking. We're always writing. We're going for a walk. Like everything's always in formation. And so I think it's really important to engage, to become aware of that. You know what I mean? And basically, and also like not using just information from your head, right? You want to use like I, always talk about this poem, and it starts, my mouth jam full of peanut butter, I'm stuck. Right. And so it's like this real visceral, like doing check-ins, like what are your eyes seeing? What does your mouth see? What are your ears doing? What are you touching? What do things smell like? You know what I mean? So that the whole body, you gathering information from every single part of your body to write something, So I always do like body awareness stuff. So that said, like, with poetry, I'm always like, now I've been doing a lot of visual art, and I resisted putting language into it for a long time, because people were like, oh, of course, you're going to do language. And I was like, no, because I already do that. And now after a few years, I'm like, oh, I'm going to put text in, and I absolutely love it. So the interesting thing is, while I'm painting, I'm also processing writing, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's like with poetry, like, so I do a lot of things in my head, a lot of things, like when I'm teaching, something will click for me, or, when I'm listening to the news, so you can always be writing. But and it also depends on like what you respond to. For me, like everything's open all the time, so it's just kind of like I'm getting a lot of information a lot of different ways, and it may take me a while to write it down. Like I started writing things down more now as they come along, because I'll forget. I used to not forget. But I have to write things down, and then I think prose requires something very different, so I think poetry, you can do it in a lot of different ways. You could do it on the train, you could do it, you know what I'm saying, wherever. But like prose really, I think, requires a certain kind of like discipline, like it's like at minimum, an hour, and then go, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But you have to kind of like, you got to write it out, you got to go back, you got to redraft it, so it requires a different kind of listening and engagement. So if I'm writing, so it's easier for me to write poetry.
Your sound, something's going on with your sound.
Hello?
Better, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's easier for me to write poetry, but I need more concentrated time, to write prose.
Yeah. I've found in, like, I used to didn't forget all the things, but like 2020 has got me walking into rooms and forgetting why I'm in there. Right. So I've called it the COVID brain. So I've taken to like keeping a notebook with me to jot it down so I don't forget, because You know, some days I don't know what day it is. Like I had to set an alarm to make sure I did not miss Tuesday.
Right.
And a chance to talk to your amazing self. So you talked earlier about intergenerational queer community.
Right.
Can you elaborate more on that? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, I came of age, I had again, like a poetry reading would be, June Jordan would be, like June Jordan came to speak to my class at the new school, right? And and the first thing, and I think I write about it in Funeral Diva and like the first story, like, but she said, I think she was like the first like professional poet, maybe not, but like someone of her stature. She came to the new school to speak, and we were just a small group of people, like right at that. And she was like, this country needs a revolution. And this is like late 80s. And I was like, she like blew my mind. And I really didn't like her actually because she was like trying to pick up my girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like it was like she was bisexual, Say Custodiana used to always say that. He goes, she's bisexual, right? It was like, okay. So anyway, she was like cruising my girlfriend. So I was like not happy with her, And I don't know, but it always stuck. You know what I'm saying? So, or just like seeing Audre like going and like there'd just be a crowded room and, just I would sit there and cry, it was just like a place to like sit, and then all these like, again, like in Funeral Diva. Funeral Diva is about like a whole bunch of people, kind of, Black lesbians and gays, spurred on by the work of Audre Lorde and James Baldwin. And we converged upon New York in our individual ways, but came together as a community. And basically to become writers, and it was sort of like an undocumented, literary scene. And then everyone sort of like died. And but yeah, like, Jewel Gomez, like Sapphire, like Cheryl Clark. Everybody was just around, you know what I'm saying? And so yeah, and we were like really the first generation. Like, we were like Audre and James's children,
Yeah. Yeah.
And like there was this permission, and we kind of like stowed away to like make ourselves, in the Big Apple, So in a way, some of the intent of Funeral Diva is also to document that time, because I don't really feel that it's been documented adequately in like what our contribution was. Here you had all these, just a mass of like Black lesbians and gays, like of every generation. And here we were in New York City, and we were writing, and we were, performing. And I saw Sato saying, and every time, I went to the theater or something like that, because also identity politics were really in formation then, and like, theater was sort of changing.
Yeah.
And I really feel like that was kind of like brought on by Intozaki, like, like even the form of like for colored girls, right? And like, so here were all these lesbians and gays who were experimenting with form, right? And then you had people coming out of the gallery scene who were also experimenting with like, theatrical performative form, right? And so, but every time I like went to the theater or went to a poetry reading, like my mind was blown. Like you didn't come out of there like thinking, oh, that was cute or anything like that. These were people who took you to the next level, you know what I'm saying? And so I always held on to that as like the way that I wanted to write and the way that I wanted to present myself. Like, so, like talking about Asado Saint and seeing him stand up at Donald's funeral, which I talk about a lot in the book. That moment, like, just changed my life forever. Here it is, like this guy, like they're trying to bury Donald Woods and say that, he and say that he died from heart failure. And Asado Saint, like, I mean, the place was like packed, you know, his family, the community. And Asado Saint took over the pulpit. He like literally stormed the pulpit and said, you know, this is a lie, you know. And I mean, it was just like one of the most powerful moments of my life, you know. And he said, if you agree with me, stand up. And like, there are people who were really angry at him for doing that. But I remember looking over and Donald's sister was standing up, you know. And so, but the bottom line is like, that's the kind of powerful stuff that I grew up with, you know what I mean? So I always wanted to kind of model that. Like, I always want people to feel like that same way, like, holy shit, you know what I mean? What did she just say? Or, you know, like, no holds barred. Like, I want, like, I was reading something recently and they were saying, oh, that I wrote to like kind of like save lives. And it's like, yeah, that kind of is my intent. You know what I mean? Like, I just, you know, like, I'm not, you know, Audrey's thing was like, make a piece of work as if someone's life depends upon it, you know?
And art does.
Yeah. And so that's, you know, so the urgency. So I was never coming to the word or coming to the stage to play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What is it? You know what I'm saying? It's very like, what is it? What's their name? Who does a Big Frida? You know, it's like, I came to slay.
And be intentional with it.
Right.
Would you like to share another piece from Funeral Diva?
Sure.
Awesome.
Okay.
I really like Rope-a-Dope. I'm not saying that's what you should read. I'm just saying that I like it.
Oh, yeah. It was so funny. My hand just rested on it. Okay. So I'll read that and then I'll read something else. Okay. So I had just begun to relax, celebrate the marriage equality ruling. I had just begun feeling with Obama. I was watching Ali in trouble, off the ropes, delivering to his opponent the rope-a-dope, my father's eyes, excitement. I was just beginning to breathe air, feel exhilarated at images of Joe Biden and President Obama running down halls of the White House with rainbow flags like boys with kites soaring. I was just beginning to forgive debts of my brothers to AIDS, not forget. There should still be tribunals for them and every woman abused by the medical system. I had just begun to turn a corner on Mike Brown, Freddie Gray, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, the massacre at AME, not think of it all every day. And then the police killed this young black girl in custody in Texas, claimed she committed suicide. And I remember we're a war nation in war times. I imagine how James, Bayard, Nina felt, seeing a nation turn its dogs' teeth, gas, hoses, bullets on children, adults, humans. I can't stop thinking about Steve Biko, his battered face. They say he hung himself too, the world's outrage. Who will pray now for us? America.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you know, the whole magical Negro trope that America plays, how we could be handcuffed in the back of a police car, handcuffed behind our back and still manage to shoot ourselves in the head. It's like, it's amazing. I don't even know. So yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
These takes me places, but thank you for sharing. And what's next? Will you share next?
The Sidewalk Rage.
Tilt your camera a little bit towards you.
Okay.
There you go. There's your beautiful face. Hello.
Can you see me?
I can.
I'm not sure why, but it's taken forever for me to write this poem, and I hope to remember all the pieces. But I've developed a new condition, one that's come from age. I can no longer take the shit that I once did. And there's a part of my condition that comes from gentrification and cell phone use, living amidst tech zombies and their general fear and hatred of POC. My condition is called sidewalk rage. It's kind of like road rage, but it comes when I'm walking down the street and there's some millennial who's just moved into the neighborhood who thinks it's theirs, a white girl who in broad daylight feels a dark presence walking behind her. It's me, minding my own business, and she gets so panicked and paralyzed she stops walking and holds her purse. With my new condition, I yell, "If you don't want to live around Black people, get the fuck out of the neighborhood." She's shocked. Or in another scenario, you see random white women on their phones standing in a doorway, completely blocking it because, only they exist. And you're like, hello, hello. Yes, all these years I thought I was still a small town girl. And then suddenly, with my sidewalk rage, I'm a bona fide New Yorker, like the ones you've seen on bicycles banging on the hood of a taxi cab that tries to cut them off. My person with sidewalk rage is a character of their own. Where once I was silent, recently, I confronted a man who was blocking my path crossing the street. He had his head down and he almost rammed into me. I sucked my teeth loud and I shouted, "Hello! Hello! Move!" He was so angry, I confronted him. He yelled, "Suck my dick." I started to yell something profane, but I stopped myself. And then I was in the subway going downstairs and a white man rammed into me on the phone. My sidewalk rage kicked in and I thought for a second to sneak behind him and kick him down the stairs. That's my sidewalk rage, but I stopped myself. I don't know who this person is in me, who would never speak up for herself, was always soft and vulnerable, who's been at various times pickpocketed, blasphemed, body slammed, ransacked, ridiculed, who now has a voice, who now lets rage show, who couldn't express herself, has now become all angles and sharp edges.
I love that. Oh my God. I didn't know I had it. Now I know what you diagnosed me. It's what it is. Huh, that was awesome. No, I live in a neighborhood that's being rapidly gentrified. It stopped for a bit when COVID hit, but it's kicking back up now. Like the house across the street from me that was on the market for $350,000 apparently sold. Where 15, 20 years ago when you moved in my neighborhood, the houses were like $45,000. So I'm just like, all you did was build a deck. That's all you did. But
that's
yeah.
A poem. That's a poem. All you did was build a deck.
Dude, I'm writing it down right now. Writing it down.
Yeah,
forget.
That's a poem. Yeah.
No, but like and again, like I have had, I've lived in this neighborhood between my mom's house and my house. I've lived over in this area for about 20 years. And we had some folks move in, and I'm out on my porch, which is where I practice and talk to myself, which is why nobody fucks with my house because they think I'm insane, and I'm okay with that. And I watch her, and she's like putting something in my mailbox, and little white woman. I'm like, you do know that's illegal, right? You're not allowed to actually put things in people's mailboxes. And she says, but we have to get the drug dealers out of our neighborhood. And I say, no, love your drug dealer, because they're going to make sure ain't no police, ain't nothing happening around here. It'll be happening over there.
Right.
You've been here for 5 minutes.
Right.
Calm down.
Right.
The hood don't stop being the hood because you showed up.
Right. Right. Well, at least it was required to say no drums. It's like Amiri Baraka is like when they ban your baba boom, you're in trouble, you're in deep trouble. It may take you 400 years to get out, But yeah, wise.
Yes, right? Yes. Yeah, you just, that's not, okay, colonizer, whatever. All right.
Right. No, but like they come into the hood and they're like, no drums, no drums.
Or drugs. They were to get the drug dealers out. I'm like, no, keep the drug dealers because he's protecting my house.
Here, and they just don't want you to play drums. I mean, can you imagine people like on Sunday afternoon playing drums and they're like, could you please stop with
now you make me want to start a drum circle in my front yard.
You know what I'm saying? That'll drive them crazy.
All right. Okay, we're having too much fun. This is serious business.
All right. No more.
All right. How do you feel about mentorship as a practice, and how do you choose who you take on as a mentee?
Well, I've been a mentor a lot. I'm a professional mentor. I am actually. One of the things that I've been talking to this particular organization that I'm working with right now is about starting more services for Black lesbians, because I really feel like, I just feel like we're an underserved population, you know, and like I get there and I'm like, I want to mentor all of them, you know what I mean? And I can only choose one, but everyone has like, you know, and I'm a little tired of that system too, like only one, you know what I mean? And it's like, how do we, how can we in organizations do that differently? You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, because you know, on a certain level, if you're the one, I mean, it's great, you know what I'm saying? But if you're not, you know, um, so I mean, I'm trying to get them to expand services for Black lesbians, you know, across the board. And so I've made it a priority to choose like Black lesbians actually to mentor. And then actually, I'm going to be in a talk with Tommy Pico later on in the month. And like Tommy Pico is a wonderful Native American poet, and I mentored him. And I mean, I chose him like out of a lineup because somebody had chosen the person that I wanted to work with. And then I said, well, you know what? I really like this person and I like what they're going for. And I remember sitting in an office and we had spread his poems out, you know, across the floor, and we were going through them and we were ordering them. And I said, you know, I don't mean to be like, you know, tacky or whatever, but for lack of better reference, I said, but you could be a great American queer Native American poet, right?
Yeah.
And like, you know, Sherman Alexie, but you would be, you know, queer, right? And like Tommy's like looking at me like, what is she talking about? And who did they become? A great queer Native American poet. And then they sent me something where they're like, you know, they're now friends with like Sherman Alexie and like all this stuff. But I mean, I had the vision. You know what I'm saying? I looked at them and I said, this is who you could be, you know? We
Yeah.
need you, you know? And like and sometimes it's like, and yeah, it is like only the one, you know what I mean? So I'm like, you know, say to an Asian person, well, you could be this great, like, you know, and it's like, it's terrible because we don't have like a plethora of like different identities. There's only one, there's only two. And I mean, hopefully, you know, that's changing. You know,
Yeah.
I would like to change it, but I try to give like opportunities to people that I feel like wouldn't necessarily have the opportunities, you
Right.
know.
Right.
But then sometimes I get kind of mad, you know, too, because sometimes I think like people don't really know what it takes, like to sometimes like be that only one who's like standing in a room full of white people, you know, saying like this is, you know, this is who I pick and this is why. And like in like walking them through like the fire, you know what I mean? Like they don't know what kind of goes into it, you know?
Right.
So in the end, you know, yeah, I remember someone didn't like thank me and it really bothered me. You know, it's not that I'm doing it for the glory or anything, but I just, you know, I just remember going through so much to make it happen, you know.
Yeah. 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 No, it takes a lot. Takes a lot. So Funeral Diva is both historic and in the moment. Can you talk about how
Mm.
this moment of COVID-19 continued police violence against Black people and white supremacist violence in general reflects, echoes, or continues in the themes you explore about the 80s? And what, if anything, has changed? I know that's a long ass question.
No, in a way, I think it's gotten worse. You know, I mean, I was serious. Like this, like whole like Trump administration has really like blown my mind. You know, well, one of the things that it has been important that I've been like, okay, even in Rope a Dope, you know, I say I want there to be some sort of recognition of all my brothers that have been lost to AIDS, but also to for women who've been abused by the medical system. And one of the things that I say in a poem later is that I've waited for this moment, you know, for a time of medical Me Too, you know.
Yeah.
And so I really feel like the medical system has been criminal to women, you know, and I feel like it hasn't been documented. and it hasn't been talked about. And so I mean, they're starting to talk about like Black women in terms of like getting prenatal care, or Black women in terms of like, pregnancy and how they're being treated. So it's starting to come out a little bit, but I mean, that's one of my commitments too, is to always like try to push, through talking about, Black women's health and how Black women have been treated, mistreated by the medical system. And there's like all kinds of, and I'm not saying like, if you need to go to the doctor, go to the doctor. You know what I mean? And I'm not all about like, oh, they're always wrong or none of that. You know what I'm saying? If that's the system that we have, you know what I mean? Go and, utilize it to the best of your ability,
Right.
But
right.
I do think that as we're dismantling all these things and as things are being called into question, I really think that, this system, the medical system, needs to change, dramatically. Yeah. And that's like the thing, like they were saying, like at the beginning of the pandemic, you see these news articles and they're like, it's like a tale of two cities. I mean, it's shocking inequities. And it's like, where have you been? You know what I mean? These inequities have existed forever.
Ever. In fact, you put them there. Hello.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, people are like, shock. And it's like, well, and I mean, I guess like, from the AIDS era, the first one, I did learn about how messed up the system was, and then having had my own like medical issues and stuff like that, and having to go through the system and seeing how absolutely dysfunctional it was, or like them, being threatened because of the fact that like I'm asking to see the x-ray or something, you know what I mean? Like you're not supposed to participate, you know what I mean? On one hand, there are new models where like, once when a dentist like, took the mirror and put it in my mouth and like, told me to look, and I'm like, oh, what? You know what I mean? But so there are like, there's a move now for people to be more engaged with their own healthcare. But then on a certain level, like if you challenge them or if you ask to participate in certain ways and you look a certain way, and you're not with a man, I mean, it's a very patriarchal system too, and it's used to like sort of like gaslighting, women, basically they're talking about, like at the border that they're like sterilizing women, and it's like they've been sterilizing every single major minor hospital, across like, New York, across the country. They've been sterilizing women without giving them any kind of information and stuff like that. Women of a certain race and class, and so I'm like, it's time to like wake up, on that aspect.
No, that's real. Like I have a one of my best friends a couple of years ago went to the emergency room with a case of food poisoning, and the doctor suggested a hysterectomy.
Wow.
And she was like, you need to leave.
Right.
And he was like, but you had all the kids you want to have, right? And she was like, you need to leave.
Right.
Like, you're not my doctor. This is an emergency room. How is the cure for food poisoning a hysterectomy? And if she had not been as educated as she is, and someone and there was an assumption made there that she didn't know what that was, I think,
Right.
So that kind of stuff happens and has been happening like forever. I stopped I have insisted on all of my doctors being Black women for the last 2 years because I went to a doctor and I was in pain, and she said on a scale from 1 to 10, and where's your pain? And I was like, it's at a 10, and she was like, it couldn't hurt that much. And I'm like, you're not listening. I need a Black doctor. I need a Black doctor right now. At this point, and at this moment, it could be a Black male or female doctor, but I need a Black doctor right now.
Right.
That I think I'm grateful that there are some changes that are being felt in the medical community, and that in that respect, I'm glad that America is finally realizing they got a racist problem and a whole lot of other ism problems. And now suddenly 2020 just woke everybody up. And now I need something to happen. Now I need some real change to happen. When you talk in your Funeral Diva, some of the essays that you share, when you talk about going to Africa and actually seeing the factories over there, can you share some of what that experience was like for you, just being in that space and in that place?
Well, it was really interesting because like I used to do voiceover, like I was like a big voiceover commercial artist, and like I had like, you know, I don't know, I had a lot of money. I got like a lot of money, and it was like, and I just been through a lot, and it was like, oh, you know, what's something that you've always wanted to do? And I was like, oh, go to Africa, right? And so basically I wanted to give myself a gift, you know. And so and then I had a friend who's actually really famous now, Romuald Hazume. And he makes masks and stuff like that. And Romuald had like stayed with me at the beginning of his career because I was friends with like his dealer, and so basically he said, you know, if you ever want to come to Africa, come visit me. So then I was like, oh, okay, cool. So Romuald was actually in Paris, but then I was like, oh, where can I go near Benin? You know, and basically they speak English. And I mean, I was like a little crazy because I went by myself. You know, I was like, okay, girlfriend, you know what I mean? No one shows up in the middle of Africa by themselves, right? But and I was like, no, I was really panicked. Like I had like some kind of like it was literally something in a movie, like I had like culture shock. So I went, you know, I landed in Accra, and I was and I stayed at like Hotel Novel, right? And I went down the street to like Makola Market, and like that market like swirls and swirls and swirls, and like literally like I heard drums, and I saw it like, and I could smell everything because like their filter system is very different than ours. And
Yeah.
I was like, my head started spinning, and I was like, get me out, get me out. And so I was like, and like literally I had to stay in the hotel for at least 2 days to get my like bearings on it because it was so different, you know?
Yeah.
And because it's like, I mean, everything, like you smell everything. So you smell the food, you smell the animals, you smell everything. And so just that alone is like different, and then colors different. And so
Yeah.
like it's just like a sensory kind of like overload. And everything's going really fast, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, so I thought that I was going on a vacation kind of, but it ended up that it was sort of like it was a pilgrimage, and it was a spiritual journey, right?
Mm.
So that wasn't really that, I didn't have that knowledge, you know. But
Yeah.
then, you know, everyone was like, go to Cape Coast, and like, and they were playing Roots in the hotel. And then so I made it to like the slave fort, and like, yeah, I think like, I mean, for me, I had a spiritual awakening, you know, and you know, so my life changed, you know. I mean, I became like much more aware of like, because I don't think, I mean, I came out of the church. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher and stuff like that, but I don't think I was like really into ancestor worship or really aware of like you know, another world, you know, beyond the physical. Do you know what I mean? Like a spirit world or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And that it became like really real to me, you know, there, you know. And yeah, and just I mean, I think I also was very aware of like how little we've been told, you know, here, you know. And because it's like, oh no, you know what I mean? Like we have not, I mean, literally, like I remember just like learning about like a couple of slaves, you know, and then it was over, you know what I mean? And then Roots, you know, which was like one family, you know what I'm saying? But
Right.
that's it, you know. And
Yeah.
then, you know, some of the things that I always talk about like I like science fiction, but I also think America tells its like racial stories through science fiction.
Yeah.
So that the bottom line is that we got roots in like Planet of the Apes and like King Kong, like all of those things are like actually racial stories. You know what I mean? So King Kong is like, is the sun, the native sun, stolen from Africa, journeys, across the ocean,
Right.
and is held in chains. You know what I mean? And when I did this piece on Kong, people were like, Kong was black, and it was like, yeah, and then I also like I became really fascinated because Kong was actually the first movie that I saw after I'd come back from Ghana. Like it was like 2005, and it was like, King Kong was in the movie theaters, and I thought, oh God, how retro. You know what I mean? What are they
Right.
showing this? Why would they show this shit? And I mean, people were really offended by it. And I mean, the interesting thing is that like I think Peter Jackson's King Kong was actually a product of 9/11, like that he comes back, like it's not just a racial fantasy, but like Kong is an American soldier, right?
Right.
So Kong, like, so Kong is like, he's the one that's fighting the planes, so he, basically represents America's vulnerability. So it wasn't just like this whole like the racist like schlock that it started as, but then it took
Yeah.
on this whole 9/11 tonality. And there's one of the things that I say in some of my work, is that I think like after 9/11, like all Hollywood endings changed, you know, so that like, you started to see things very, very differently. But yeah, King Kong, I think, was resurrected in that. But I think like, I mean, I became aware, I mean, I guess of like a really rich like heritage. I mean, even though I don't know where I'm from, I'm adopted, but for me, and it's interesting, like I never searched for my birth parents or anything like that, but like I didn't realize I was on a search to find out who I was. And I think like finding out more on a historical level was
Yeah.
really powerful for me. Like it doesn't really matter specific, it's more about just knowing where black people came from. And it's just sort of like a lot of American history starts on southern shores. And
Right.
so, but if we can imagine that it actually is on a continuum, and that we came from Africa, do you know what I'm saying? And so like looking at the journey much more again holistically, you know what I'm saying, as opposed to, because like basically Western geography like just cut us up in all these different places, but it's not true to who we are.
Right. Yeah.
Right. We're all interconnected. You know what I mean? Much more interconnected than how the maps were broken up.
Yeah. Yeah. And boy, were the maps broken up. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm having such a good time. So let me ask you this. When you write, do you compose first for the page, or do you think about the audience or live audience that you're composing for?
No, it's always for me. I mean, I do a lot of my poetry is conversational. So, I mean, I approach it almost like music. So I'm always listening, like, you know, so I will say a poem and it will sound like you and I are talking. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't necessarily let people see the seams of it. You know what I mean? Like that for me, that's a priority in my poetry, that it always comes across very conversationally. Like people are always like, "Oh, I can hear your voice." You know what I'm saying? So it's more about like sounding it out or how it resonates,
Yeah.
um than it is about like, I mean, the first person that I write for is always me, you know
Yeah.
um or I'll write in response to something, a response to something that my student said, or a response to something that I felt. But unless I'm like, I mean, but I am theatrically, sort of like influenced. So, I mean, I do a lot of poetic monologue, you know what I mean? So it is conversational, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So I imagine maybe the audience in that way. but I don't yeah, like I don't like make things to like make a point. You know what I mean? Like I make things that are important to me.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I'm a performance poet as well, and I often am asked, like when I was slamming, it's like, how do you write a slam poem? I'm like, I've never actually sat down and said, hey, we're gonna write ourselves a slam poem right now. I just write a poem, and if it happens to work in that world, then I will use it in that world. But I have also, and I'm sure you do too, I have poems that I will never perform live because that's not what their life is supposed to be about. That's supposed to be in a book, and you're supposed to read it. So yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
No, I have like vice versa because people are always like a lot of things that I do. I write performatively in the sense of like, yeah, it's meant to be spoken, but yeah, there are things that I write that, yeah, no, or not that intent, and like people always say to me, well, don't you want to perform it? And I'm like, well, no, I'm writing a book, and they're like, but it's a performance, right? It's a play, and I'm like, well, no, it's not a play. You know what I mean? Like, I know what a play is, but this isn't a play. You know what I mean? But like, it's kind of like they won't allow me to choose. You know what I mean? Like they, if I in like somehow like a performance poet is supposed to be, less than a literary poet. You know what I mean? Like it's just like it's really. But those are other people's issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not. And I mean, it's like, again, it's like the smart people who say, you're everything, right? And it's like, yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So it's like, it bothers me, like people, like a lot of times when I finish, they're like, well, you're not this, you're this, and it's just kind of like, I don't know. Who's this definition for? You know what I'm saying? Like either you got the word or you didn't get the word. You know what I'm saying? Like you got a message or you didn't get a message, but you don't need to come up to me to define me for me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that's a spot for me, is I have a lot of people who do that, who assume themselves into my work. Like I'm doing my one woman show. It's going to be released as a film on Thursday.
Yay!
It's as in this new COVID thing, since we don't have actual live audiences. But I remember when I did it, it's called Then They'll Tell You It's All in Your Head. And basically it's about being Black in America. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember doing it in 2017. I was on stage for 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I do one poem that's called Gentrification, which is about a white woman taking my fear of my son being murdered by police and basically framed it into All Boys Matter, right? I did that poem like midway through the piece. At the end of the play, I had a white woman come up to me and say, was that poem about me? I just talked for 90 minutes about my experience in America, and you made all of that about you. So do you find that kind of energy coming at you from groups of people who are not of color?
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember a couple of people like, yeah, also like when I would finish something and they would say, oh, that must be about such and such. And I was like, no, not at all. Yeah. So like people's like narcissistic projections, that's like kind of weird. But I find like people have like an expectation for you to speak in a particular tongue. Like sometimes like, like the angry, Black lesbian poet or whatever. It's like, that's like a long time ago. You know what I mean? Like they're like my identity is, is complex. You know what I'm saying? But like it's almost like they only accept if you speak in one tongue. You know what I mean? Like it's only like, oh, well, well, talk about me. Aren't you mad about like racism or whatever? And it's like, well, actually, I'm talking about this. You know what I mean? And this is a piece of comedy. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just kind of like when you take the attention off of them, I feel like, you know, it becomes like really hard. Like they expect there's a language, or like they expect to always be the focal point, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And always for you to speak in a certain kind of tongue. And it's like, you know what? Like, I don't have to answer to you. You know what I mean? And yeah. I had a
Yeah.
conversation with somebody yesterday, and they really, like, they started off the conversation. I won't even like get into it too much, but they were like, well, first of all, I know nothing about, this artist that I was writing about. And it's like, well, if you know nothing about the artist, right? Why do you feel that it's okay to come to me and critique me? And they're like, and they're young and they're like white. And like they had a whole checklist about like how I should, envision this character. And it's like, it's not your right. It's not your right. But at least it's like, at least if you wanted to have a conversation like out of respect, I would
Yeah.
do the research. You know what I mean? If you're doing something on like, Shakespeare, and I have a criticism, but I've never read Shakespeare, well then, you know what?
You're gonna
Go
research,
do
educate yourself, right?
right. Go
Yeah.
do the work, and then we can have a conversation. But don't start with me and like, well, I don't know anything about this, this artist.
Yeah. I feel like those kind of conversations, they just want to argue with somebody.
Yeah, it was really weird. It was really weird. But everyone, I was like more concerned with like the white people that told them to talk to me. I was more like, really? Why would you tell this person to like, contact me?
Lose my number. Lose my
Right.
number.
Right.
So, in this time that we are dealing in with all this upheaval and crazy and everything, what are some things that are giving you life right now? Like, what are some TV shows that you're binge watching, or some songs or books or things that you're into that are just like allowing you to check out on the madness that is America in this moment?
Art, like visual art.
So
That's
you're painting
like,
a lot. You're painting a lot.
I'm painting like a lot, like, and there were like a lot of free classes. I think it was kind of like, when COVID first hit, I think like the mayors were telling people like, artist organizations to like offer people classes and stuff to help them. And so I like took all kinds of free classes. It was fabulous, right? And so that was really great. So that, and it's also a way to be in community, right? So working with people and just doing art. um so that's been a big thing. And then looking at art online, so that really kind of like sustains me. I've been watching Lovecraft on HBO.
Yeah.
I'm mixed. I mean, that actually kind of sold me. But I mean, like, I used to laugh about it again. Like 10 years ago in Kong, I was writing about like all the things that they were saying were documentaries for us were
Yeah.
actually like horror films, right? So I was already talking about like, it was like unintentionally like horror, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so I was talking about, that, or the horror films being metaphors for like black people, like District 9, and like the townships in South Africa and stuff. That's like what it's based on, right? And then the aliens and all that. So I was talking about that. So then again, with Jordan Peele and like all this stuff, like, I had written about like this time giving way to a new kind of like black exploitation. And so actually what we're getting is the black horror genre. And so it is kind of like a new sort of like, black exploitation. It's bothering me a little bit. Like, I think Lovecraft has actually done some really interesting things.
Yeah.
Like, some of the agency that I think black women, you know, have been given in that, you know, as characters, I think is like phenomenal. I've never seen it, you know. And
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and like Journey Smollett, or well, I could not watch her in Underground. I just like, I was like, oh my God, like she just seemed like a model, like, and like they had her at one point giving directions to the fictitious Harriet Tubman character, and I was like, okay, that's what I had to turn it off. It was like, no, Miss Thing, you're not giving Harriet Tubman, you know, with your like ripped up T-shirt in Jungle, you know what I mean? You're not giving her directions, right? So I was like, this is just preposterous, right? And then like, and then I see her and like, you know, all grown up in like Lovecraft with something to do. And I thought like the Black Nancy Drew, like I feel like we've been like completely, you know, what exile from like, you know, like mystery, you know, like suspense, you know, stuff. So to see Black women, like, and again, I thought Black Nancy Drew, and I was just like, wow, and I love Nancy Drew. So there were like moments that I thought were just phenomenal. And I thought her acting was phenomenal. And I was like, holy shit, I guess this is what happens when, you know, Black women are actually given, you know, stage and
Role.
space, and yeah, and can grow, and you know, good direction. Because I was like, she's phenomenal, and I just was like, I mean, I really found her unwatchable at different points. So I just like her and like a lot of the women. I mean, it's just a really powerful show. But I am like, I'm a little torn about the Black horror, you know, genre, like the mashup, you know,
Yeah.
like the Black history mashup, you know what I mean? So it's, you know, so you get like really important, you know, points in Black history, like mixed with horror and all this stuff. And, you know, I guess maybe I would feel, you know, differently if in fact we had adequate documentation, like just as documentary, you know, just as literature, if we had, you know, if we had an adequate history. But
Yeah.
like, so then the fact that I can only experience it through this horror genre, and that in a way it feels a little deadening, you know, like a desensitivity. Like, I mean, at least, and maybe this is where I'm like, you know, showing my age, because it's like, but also in this time, like every other day somebody's being murdered, you know, by the police, and then I'm turning on the entertainment, and in order for them to get to the story, I have to see three Black people, you
Murder.
know, on fire, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
No, I
literally,
yeah. No, I feel like the horror trope in that whole Lovecraft is like a metaphor of actually living in America. And that's, I think, how my mind wraps around it, to where I'm not traumatized by it. And I'm like, oh, because we are actually living in a horror story. Yeah.
right. No, I get that. And I mean, which is powerful, but it's also kind of problematic, because when I'm turning on television to watch, like I started watching like Watchmen, and literally in the first 5 minutes, I'm watching a Black man on fire, like, you know, and then I'm seeing some like horrible lynching in Lovecraft, right? And like, and it's all connected. And it's like, oh, okay, this is like what they have to do to show me this story. And then like in what was it, in Watchmen, like there were two white guys like sitting in front of this Black person whose face had been burned off. They were in the hospital room, and they were doing this kind of like pulp fictiony dialogue, and they're talking about broccoli, and they're like, well, he threw the broccoli, and like blah blah blah, and it's supposed to be this kind of deadpan kind of, you know, whatever. And I'm
Yeah.
like, but the Black man has his face burnt off, and they're in the hospital, and it's just not funny,
Right.
you know, and it's just not okay, you
Yeah.
know. And so like at times, like, I mean, I'll go along for the journey, you know, but then at times I just get really furious, and I don't know what the message is of these things, you know, because like, and like there are certain histories, like you're not going to see like open, you know, everything, you know, like, I mean, they do it with women, because women are always like being burned and kicked and stalked, and, you know, running around in a bikini, you know, being mutilated. You know what I'm saying? but and it's not supposed to mean anything, you know. But so on one hand, I mean, I think that there are liberatory aspects of these shows, but then on the other hand, I worry about the mashup and about all the fun that's being had, and like, but these images are just absolutely disgusting. And then living through it, it's just like, it's a little hard for me to watch without any analysis. And then I wonder what the message is to like young people and like what they're getting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And hopefully people are not like, hey, 6-year-old, watch this. Hopefully that's not happening. Can you tell me, as our final question, what is your favorite poem in Funeral Diva?
Oh shoot. Oh, okay. Hello. Wait. Oh, let me look.
Hear it.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's hard.
Is it so? Ugh.
I like all of them for a different reason.
Yeah.
I think probably Born Freeze might be one of my favorite. There's a Tale of Two Pandemics.
Oh wow. Yeah.
There's the one that I read, Sidewalk Rage. That's fun. I like having fun. You know what I mean? So I'm serious, but I'm also really goofy. So I like,
Well, which one would you want to close us out on?
Well, my flipping through stopped here, and so I'll do this one as kind of like a tribute to my mother and my family.
Okay.
It is courageous. I'm doing that thing now my stepmother could not do. She tried. She practiced. I will never forget the blue suitcase, a square that looked almost like an attaché case, only larger. It was always the same song and dance routine whenever she fought with my father. She'd pull the blue suitcase out of her closet. She'd pack the case, leaving it to sit by the door. She'd scream to my father, "I'm leaving you." And then the bullet. "I'm also taking your daughter. You coming with me, right?" I really had no choice. I knew she wouldn't leave and I'd be stuck with her wrath. I wanted her to go. I wanted to stay with my father, but I couldn't say that. My mother tried, but she never made it further than the stairwell. Maybe once she made it down the stairs and he dragged her back. "Call the police," she commanded to my 6-year-old self. Maybe once or twice she made it down to the parking lot and into their car, the emerald green Impala. Maybe he clung to the side of the car door and threatened. As Toni Morrison once described in Beloved, besides the main character Seth, there was a girl so traumatized by her sister's ghost, a baby whose throat was slit by her mother, she could never get past the yard. I imagine how many slaves tried as opposed to got away. How many made it down to the garden or potato patch with thoughts and sights on freedom but turned back for fear. How many, as I have, got trapped, could never get their foot loose. My mother practiced, but she could never escape. I see the end results, a depression that can't be overcome, mental illness left untreated that eats away her brain. She believes that there are bugs and a man who comes to the house and steals from her. She buys poison and puts it down daily. The worst part is that through abuse, she's been made into a man's raggedy doll. So I'm doing now what my mother could not do. Though it's late, though I should have done it long ago, moving away from abuse, emptying, going back to the beginning. It's frightening to start over, reshape my own core. What do I have? What my mother and I share is an indomitable spirit. Just when you think it's impossible, an obstacle can't be overcome, there is me. There's my mother. As in a medical drama, when you think the patient has lost too much blood, suffered too many wounds, there is me. There is my mother. It's like an action drama where the hero fleeing a villain clings for life from a rooftop, awaiting rescue. There is me. There is my mother.
Thank you so much. Y'all, I hope you have enjoyed this conversation between myself and Pamela Sneed. It was awesome. It was so great to meet you.
Likewise.
I enjoyed this banter we had. Hopefully ER doesn't have to like edit too much of the conversation. There was some words thrown around. I know they were thrown around.
We leave the cuss words in. Don't worry.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. I want to make sure folks know they can click this teal button at the bottom to purchase Funeral Diva. Just remember, it doesn't come out officially until October 27th. This is a pre-order party that we're having tonight. So we wanted to make sure we got in on the front end with Pamela. But the book we'll ship it out as soon as it's ready. And so go ahead and click that button. If you are new to Teresa's work and you like the conversation, I put links to her books in the chat, so check those out as well. I also put links to our co-sponsors for tonight's event. So Atlanta Pride, celebrating 50 years. We are so honored to be a part of that. Pride has been very good to Charis over the years. So please go click that link if you want to give to Pride. That's amazing. And then the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American Culture and History is going to be co-sponsoring a lot of events with us. So click on them as well. They have a lot of special collections that you can view digitally. So even though they are not physically open to the public, you can interact with the library and with your favorite librarians online there. So check that out because they're still doing a lot of great stuff, and their Facebook page is really active as well. So the final thing it is my job and honor to do is to remind you that our work is nonprofit work as well. So we always do that little thing. We know everybody's money is in a different place right now, so we're just glad you're here. But if you do have $1 or $2 to throw our way, we appreciate you. And I think that's it. So I hope that y'all enjoy your Pride if you're here in Atlanta, or really celebrate Pride wherever you are in the world. Pamela, thank you so much for stopping in early on your tour with us.
We're really thank you for inviting me. And
yes.
you guys were great. You were really great. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah, thank you to our friends at City Lights for agreeing to a little pre-order party. So it's always nice to work with y'all too. So in the meantime, everybody stay safe.
Wait. Was there any question? I didn't hear anything from the audience.
They were very quiet, so we just let Teresa go.
We were awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
So Teresa just had it on lock. So
all right.
So thank you both so much. Stay safe and be well. And we look forward to everybody reading this book and hopefully maybe sending you some questions that come up. So
cool.
Yeah.
All right. Happy Pride. Thank you. Bye, Teresa. You were great.